Good time zone internet. Hello and welcome to Design Club Live, the only game design show on the internet where Geoff forgets that I can see that he's doing sneaky things to do a bit during the intro when we're not on screen. I am your humble host, Will, joined as always by my pal, the incredible prankster, Geoff. Say hi to the people, Geoff.
Hi to the people, Geoff. I'm pulling up a whole different thing than what I was
great,
doing
excellent, wonderful.
Welcome to Design Club. It is Thursday morning. It is February the 12th of 2026. And today I'm going to be joined by my co-host, Will.
Allah.
Voice of the people. I'm going to drop the thing I had, which I'll pick up again in a second. And we're going to be talking about all of the games that we think you should be playing, or more specifically, actually not that, we think you should play more games, and to be able to tell your husband, wife, parent, kids, whatever, why you should be playing more games.
That's fair. I think that's, yeah, because I think this is an episode that's going to be kind of personal, right? Because lots of people play lots of games, right? Like, yes. You play League of Legends.
I do.
And I
amongst
don't.
Many other games.
Right. Yeah. Right. But I'm choosing a specific example.
Oh,
right?
Okay. I play League of Legends. Yes.
And I, generally speaking, don't, but did for a while. Gave it a shot. Gave it a good old college try. Was not for me, but I did give it a good old college try. And we think that that process is important because I am practicing this phrase a lot on the internet recently, especially when people ask about things like Highguard, which I haven't played and probably never will, thanks to the news that just came out yesterday.
What news came out yesterday?
They laid off most of the studio.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would do it.
Yeah, that'd do it. I have heard this about the game, but don't know because I haven't played it. Right? I have not played the game, so I have approximate knowledge of the game, but I don't have personal firsthand knowledge. And someone was asking during the pre-show, does watching someone play a game count? And the answer is usually no. Sometimes yes, in very specific circumstances, but
actually, I think it depends on the kind of game.
I think it does. I think it very much depends on the kind of game, right? Because
I would say watching is definitely better than never having seen it.
Yes.
Like there's probably a hierarchy of things. And some games, I think you could probably watch 10 minutes of and say, I've seen enough of this game. Like whatever it is. And there's others that I think until you've played. I'm trying to actually name me a game or two that you have to have played that you couldn't have watched. I
think I'm going to assert that one of them is Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons.
Okay.
And that is specifically because Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is a phenomenal game, and if you've never played it, you should. I'm probably going to write like a games you might not have tried short on this thing. Is a game that does storytelling through the controls. And it's very important because there are emotional revelations that happen based on the way you control the game using a controller. And that is a key part of the storytelling. So I think that, like, to really understand it, you kind of have to play it.
And maybe it's a level of understanding. Like, I could see somebody saying Tetris is a game you have to play, but I could also see them saying you could watch somebody play Tetris and understand enough of what's going on.
Absolutely.
Or other games might have surprising bits. Like, I think watching somebody play Rock Band versus playing Rock Band in a group, there's a whole part of the group performative groove that you just don't get unless you're actively participating.
Yeah.
Where a solo run of like Guitar Hero, I would say is more you could watch and more understand. But the group dynamic, like, so there's nuance.
Yeah. Wait. Are you suggesting that here on the internet we're beginning a discussion about a complicated topic with the allowance that there's going to be nuance in this?
Yes. Yes, I am.
My mind, it is blown. Okay, so let's back up and start at the beginning here.
A good place to start.
Indeed.
When you spell, you begin with ABC.
When you game, you begin with To jump, press B.
Do, re, mi.
Okay. So World of Warcraft Midnight is coming up. It's on the horizon.
Mhm.
My buddy Matt and I have been talking about this for a really long time. I am a Final Fantasy 14 player by trade. You can see my job patches over here. I play a lot of Final Fantasy. It's my main game of choice. And Matt has historically played World of Warcraft in the past. He's also tried Final Fantasy. And we've been talking a lot about how World of Warcraft's removal of weak auras and boss mods, DBM, Dungeon Boss Mod, the other readout overlay is going to change the way that Blizzard does fight design. And to look at that fight design and to play World of Warcraft without add-ons, I got into World of Warcraft, which is not a game I've historically ever wanted to play for my own enjoyment. It's not a game I vibe with.
Play or play again?
Play.
Okay.
I will confess, I played an hour of World of Warcraft, like on a private server at college, like once, and immediately bounced. But play in general, it has never called to me, really. There are a bunch of things I don't, on the surface, enjoy about it. But I am very intellectually curious about it as someone who has played a lot of Final Fantasy 14 and who talks about video games on the internet. Not having ever played WoW is a bit of a weakness. So I'm playing World of Warcraft.
And it's hard because there's a ton of those, because there's so many games.
Yes.
Because if you were in a different segment of people and they're like, Will, have you hit 1,000 hours in FIFA yet? Or in Madden, you'd be like, eh. And they'd be like, don't you play video games? Or
Right.
other people who are like, what, you don't have 1,000 hours logged in the latest Gran Turismo or Grand Theft Auto or
Call of Duty
Bejeweled
or
Blitz?
Battlefield or
Farmville. Like, the industry is so large with so many types of games that it is really hard to say. You can say I've played a lot of games, but usually that falls into a more general games. I've played a lot of games in this sector.
Right. For instance, I would consider myself an expert in the area of roguelite and roguelike video games because I've played an awful lot of those. Like, you have to go pretty far down Steam's like list of relevant roguelikes to find one I haven't either played or specifically am not playing for a very specific reason that I can generally give you.
Yeah.
Right. So like we often get very spiky in our specializations.
Where if I asked you, to critique, the 8 different types of Japanese dating sims,
I got nothing for you.
You'd be like, I played Dream Daddy.
I did play Dream Daddy once. It's a great game. I love that game. It's a phenomenal game. I've also watched people play Date Everything, which is so incredibly bizarre and unhinged. It's great. So now
I at least want to go watch a run of that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Part of the struggle here is that unlike with many other forms of media, and we'll talk about sort of the comparison to other forms of media, playing a game you don't necessarily find yourself enjoying is I would argue, a much more laborious, because of the amount of time required, right? I can sit through a 2-hour movie that I don't like and take notes on it. I've done that before for a college class. I watched a bunch of movies that were not for me. Watched a lot of horror. Don't like horror. Like suspense. Don't like horror. And I could do that. And that was sort of a thing that was reasonable. It's much harder to play a game because you need to be actively invested in like acquisition of skill, usually. And it's much longer. It's so much longer than a movie, right? Leveling a character to level 80 in WoW is like much longer than a single movie, right? So
you did just pick a really long one though. Like,
sure,
if you take like James Portnow, who helped found the channel and writes a lot, or used to write a lot of EC scripts, still I think plays a couple of games a week, every single week.
Sure,
new ones, but he'll only play a couple hours.
Right.
Like he'll play an hour or two. Like, cool, I've seen enough of this game.
Right.
He and he used to do this thing where he'd be like, Jeff, there's this amazing game, hop in. So I'd like hop in a week later and join him as he was on his way out, and then I'd sit there and get like mastery of the game. And 6 months later, I'd be like, man, I haven't seen you here in a while, James. He'd be like, yeah, I played another 40 games since then. I'm like, well, I went really deep in this one.
Tall versus wide sort of strategies, right?
I started League of Legends specifically because he was like, come play. A couple of us are playing.
Yeah.
But actually, it's funny you mentioned the watching films because, Will, at a high level,
sure,
I have a question for you. Why do film students watch a lot of films?
To learn about the art form, I would say. Right?
And like from what you mentioned, do they only watch their favorite genres of film?
Nope. It is important to watch. It is actually, I would say, even more important to watch films that you don't like so you understand why you don't like them. Right? And what the parts of those movies are. But
also, like, film students watch to learn all sorts of things. They learn about writing. They learn about how the films are made. They learn about the cinematography and the different kinds of shots and the different kinds of focus, and about how, they learn about the actors. They learn about the directing. They learn not just about the camera, but the types of shots, the way you shoot, depending upon the kind of movie you're making, how you set it based on, everything from scenes to up close shots where it could be shot wide, the amount of cuts, the edit. I mean, there's a lot to learn in there. So if you're like, hey, I like Hong Kong action movies, the editing and the pacing of those may be completely different. So you may not get to see other kinds of editing based on the style of film you like.
Right.
And therefore, it's important to go wide,
right,
and to watch old stuff all the way up to new stuff, because you get to see, oh, here's where they obviously made cameras a lot wider because we're suddenly getting these. Or, 5 years ago when you start seeing all these incredible drone shots or these incredible like aerial zoom out shots or like establishing shots way out coming in, like, oh yeah, they have drones now. Like that shot would have cost, a couple million to make. Now it costs, a drone and a camera.
Right. And I think that DemonWorks has a really good point here in chat, right? The other thing is to understand why somebody else does like that thing, right? Even if you can't emotionally resonate with Citizen Kane, right? Or Memento, right? Or Donnie Darko, or Silence of the Lambs, or Little Shop of Horrors, or
Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Choose your thing. The goal of it should be, okay, I don't like Donnie Darko, but I see why people do, right? But I see the things about it that people do, and maybe I can take some of those things as inspiration for myself. Right?
Yeah. And so, same kind of question, Will. If you're an MFA student, why do you read a lot of books?
Same reason. You need to learn, and there's a very interesting case for MFA students that makes it a little clearer. You learn a lot of vocabulary that way, right? Like we often talk, like when we're talking about film, we talk about like big things, right? We talk about like editing styles and everything else. For writing, it's simply you learned a new word, and that could be enough.
Or a new way of putting them together.
Right, or a new way of putting them together, or a new style of writing dialogue, or any number of other things that you learn both from...
The door iris opened.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And same thing, you don't just read the books of the genre you like.
Right.
And, hey, Will, third one, because I like to do it in sets of 3.
Yeah.
Why do musicians listen to all kinds of music?
Because every kind of music has something for musicians. Yeah. Like,
and do they listen only to the genres they like?
No. And that's how we get like really weird, interesting fusion stuff. I've been listening to a lot of game music actually. And the number of like, yeah, so we took this song from Zelda and made it into a big band remix. And you're like, you can do that? And they're like, yeah, we did, right? Because you gain inspiration from different places and you can make something your own without liking the original in a lot of ways.
I mean, early rock music took a lot of their rhythm, and their drummers like studied a whole bunch of blues.
Yes. Yeah.
And like came in with that, like I've read some great interviews on that.
Yep, blues and jazz have a lot to do with rock. Rock has and then early rock and pop have like this weird symbiotic relationship with a bunch of other stuff. Country actually fits in there really interesting if you're looking at the music of the US. There's all kinds of stuff. But I think the other thing that's important to acknowledge here for music is it always comes back together. Like you are always going to share roots with some other genre that doesn't on its surface seem to be directly related, but if you go back far enough, it definitely is, right? Everything started with, right, like electric tennis, right? With tennis for two. Yeah. And so those things allow you to understand those connections and to use those connections in your own work, right?
Yeah. And I think, though, me mentioning that rule of those three things, there's also a question, which is, Will, what's the difference between people who like movies and people who study film? Because I think that concept is very applicable here.
Yeah. I would say that the difference is that a person who has watched a lot of movies that they like is generally speaking a person who likes movies. And a person who has simply watched an awful lot of movies, even ones that they don't like, for a reason, is someone who studies film.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and I think that's important to bring up because not everybody has to be, a cinemaphile or a film junkie or a film student or a music student or a literature student or everything else. But there's kind of a difference between between liking and deciding that you want to be more of an expert.
Right. So like we could take, I'm going to go grab this. Mikhail's example, right? Of specifically playing a game you've never played every month, right? That's an example of this, right? Like you're not playing a game that catches your fancy necessarily, but you're aiming to play a new game every month for a reason. And in this case, it's because of Steam Rewind and how effective Steam Rewind is at shaming all of us for not playing our backlogs. Play your backlog. Play your backlog. I need to play my backlog. You should too. So I think that's a big part of it, is the intentionality, right? A
whole bunch. And part of it too is deciding if that's a thing you're interested in.
Yes.
Kind of what does it take to go from being a person who likes games to being a person with broad video game literacy?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who like games, and that's great. And everyone could stop there. There is no reason, unless you personally want to kind of go from I like games to I want to have tremendous literacy in games and be able to talk intelligently about all types and see how, the roots and they come in and they interact with each other and everything else.
Right. And again, I'm going to do the thing I do quite often, which is if you're here watching this, the chances are better than usual that you will find yourself in that category of people who desires to understand games more deeply and to have interesting conversations about them rather than being someone who simply likes video games. Right? There are plenty of people who like video games and that they come home from work, play 4 hours of Baldur's Gate 3 on a playthrough that they'll never finish, start a new playthrough because they got an idea for a new character, and that's their relationship with games. And they love Baldur's Gate 3 and they love the idea of playing games. They don't go any further than that, and that's fine.
Were you watching that Deerstalker Productions short on that?
No, but I mean, the phenomena is common enough that it's pretty easy to call that out.
There is a great one. They shifted from doing like more generic, they're not generic, their own world of D&D to also covering Baldur's Gate with some really great like cosplay videos. And there's one where basically all of the characters slowly realize that the main character has never, I think, gotten actually into Act 3, just keeps resetting somewhere around 2, and that they've seen this thing over and over and over.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah. 100% on that.
I do. I also love my one diversion. I love that we have linguistic drift, right? That Groundhog Day used to mean the day that we check and see if a rodent sees its shadow, and that will dictate whether or not we have winter. And now Groundhog Day means a day that's repeated over and over again because of a movie.
The Bill Murray effect.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's great. So
Bill Murray's had a couple of those where actually the movies he's been in have like changed the. Actually, we don't need to get in a linguistic.
no, we're going.
Focus us.
Okay, so let's say that I, as a person, want to go from I've played a bunch of video games and I like video games. I enjoy them. I spend money on them. I spend time on them. I have access to a wide variety, whether that's on a console or a PC or my phone or whatever. I play a lot of video games. Now I want to have game literacy. How do I do that?
Does it involve a blowtorch or at least a cigarette lighter?
No.
Oh, different kind of lit? Okay.
Yeah, not that kind of lit. And the answer is
game literacy is, and I think that's a hard term to use here because I think kind of game literacy is a phrase that makes people think this might be more studious and academic than it is.
Yeah.
Because I think it's that way for some disciplines, but I think a lot of game literacy is intentionality of playing, but also just playing widely. You know, it isn't doing the thing where you come home every night, as you were saying, like, I'm going to do a couple hours of League of Legends and crash. You can still do that, but, you know, maybe you take an hour every other day and you start playing, you know, a couple games a week, work through that Steam backlog, check out demos, you know, go buy a whole bunch of things, you know, look at the free Epic Store game or a whole bunch of others. So you're picking up just things and starting to check out what all is going on out there.
The Epic Store giveaways are a great example of something you can leverage here because there are all kinds of games in the giveaways and they're all free. So you're not investing money because that's another thing that is a barrier, right? Is that some people
100%.
don't have a ton of money to throw at games that they might not like.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, honestly, if you just made yourself an Epic account and went every single week for the next year or two and claimed the game and then decided you're going to play 10% of those, like that's already hundreds of dollars of free gaming things. And you'll be, as a nice side benefit, making Epic give a whole bunch of money to developers.
Yeah, right.
Because they have to pay the devs for each of those games, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah. So there are two ways.
Hold on. Wait, this is also worth calling out.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is also
time is the very hard part. Yeah. And as before we get into it, the strategy for the time not money one is, you know, you start combing the internet for, you know, best of lists, or you even go over to Metacritic and you're like, cool, let me look at every 90 plus Metacritic game that's come out over the past 20 years.
Yeah.
Maybe over the next 2 years, you'll work your way through at least an hour or two of each of those games. In other words, maybe your thing is, let's take the exemplars of the industry and play. Like, you can go about your literacy in radically different ways, but having a plan for that, if you're short on time, can make it feel much less overwhelming.
Yep. And I want to talk about this, right? Thomas has the idea of playing bad games too. I think
Burger King Sneak King game. Oh,
right. Or I'm gonna get some people right in the nostalgia real quick. Chex Quest. Chex Quest was a game that came in boxes of Chex cereal in like the target age for millennials. A bunch of people played Chex Quest, right? Like, well,
actually, do you have the ability, by the way, I don't know, with this setup, to show a quick picture on, or are we not set up for that right now?
More difficult because I need a different.
Okay, never mind.
A bunch of stuff.
For anybody who's never seen it, Google the Burger King Sneak King game cover.
Yeah.
It is one of the single creepiest things I think I've ever seen on a game cover.
Yep, 100%.
And so, anyway, go ahead.
So there's two things, right? One is you still get to select a subsection of games, right? So like, I agree that there is a group of people who will take the idea of playing bad games as part of this to see why they are bad, right? In just the same way that we do things to see why someone likes them, you can play a thing for yourself to see exactly why it's bad. In fact, there were a bunch of reviews on Highguard to that effect. People were like, I didn't look at any of the negative reviews and I played it myself, and here's why I think it's bad. which does happen to line up with what other people thought, but I wanted to find out for myself, right? Yeah. That's one category. The other category is that because we're talking about literacy, not for a class, you are allowed to self-select out bad games, right? For some people, those experiences are, and this is going to be true in a broad way. There are going to be, you should work up to it, right? You shouldn't immediately play the game you hate the most, right? You shouldn't immediately play the game that you think is the worst piece of trash ever. You should like work towards that with purpose, I guess, is like my only like pushback on that.
So, Thunder just posted a cover where it's the shadow. There was one that was much, much creepier.
Yeah.
Where is that one? Sorry, keep going. I saw the cover come in, and there was one that was much.
We have lost Geoff to the whims of nostalgia. So,
well, this is back when I was running my research game studio, and like the Sneak King game was like amazing for so many ways when you're looking at everything else that was coming out.
Yes. I love this quote, right? That literacy is itself a spectrum, right? And that all we're saying is that there is a methodology to go from your current level of literacy to more literate. And that's what we want to talk about, right? Specifically with this WoW thing, specifically with some of the other games I've played on the channel. I'm going to speak heresy now. You may brace yourselves if you feel it is necessary.
All right, what do we got?
I don't like Hades 2. It didn't land for me at all. Didn't like it. But I did want to play it. And I did play it. And chat got very confused for 2 days. In part because it made my hands hurt. And in part because I was very open about the fact that I did not like the idea of playing the game, but wanted to understand why people liked it and what it did well, right? And that was sort of the beginning of me thinking about this, was how would I do that effectively? Why didn't it land? Great question. I think the Hades combat is super sloppy and unfun. Like the moment-to-moment combat. The build generation is interesting. The moment-to-moment combat, I just completely misses me, and I just don't like it. So that's why. But the character design, the writing, the score, the visuals, the world building, the upgrade system, the meta progression unlocks, all top tier. Absolutely. And I can definitely see why some people do like the combat, but I don't.
It's interesting. That also shows in a lot of cases, going back like with my dev hat, on how hard it is to make games, because they did so many things right for that. But one of the things they did was not quite up to, like, it was enough of a deal breaker for you.
Yeah.
And like, games have the opportunity to do that on everything. You know, it could have been the story where you're like, the combat's fun, but man, the story is just, or the characters, or the art style. Like, I know you're not a big fan of League of Legends art style, you like Dota, where I think the League is much cleaner and I dislike Dota.
I also think that
art style is enough for me not to play it.
Right. And I think I also, and this is like the beginning of, I think a part of the conversation is, I think that while I prefer Dota's art style personally, I recognize and respect that League's art style is more effective at communicating key gameplay information to an esports viewer quickly and cleanly. And we have evidence of that in some footage that we actually just looked at this morning.
Will. Joey's talking.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so big thing. If you guys remember, like a year ago,
it was an actual
had two separate 2-hour streams where we were basically deconstructing MOBAs. With it was a great it was a really good interactive stream. We were just talking about all of the basic MOBA concepts. We slowly turned that into a script, did a whole bunch of footage capture on top of animation, and I think it's the next extra credits or maybe the one after.
Soon
it's going to be coming out.
Yeah.
Is basically a MOBAs 101, a deconstruction of MOBAs for people who either played a lot or who have never played one.
Yeah. Walking
them through like the concept, not like how to play League or Deadlock or Dota or anything. It's the concepts of what a MOBA wants you to understand to play it.
Right.
the way, to play it interestingly.
Because there's already plenty of videos on how to play Deadlock and how to play Dota and how to play League and all of that, and that's not our wheelhouse. Our wheelhouse
is a whole different thing. Yeah.
What is MOBA? Why do MOBA? Anyway, not the point. So,
and we were watching footage this morning of the rough cut, so it's on the top of both Will and my minds.
Yeah. We have led ourselves astray into the woods of distraction.
Kind of starting to talk about, anyway, game literacy. So there is a thing, between a person who likes games and a person who has broad game literacy.
Right.
And that's a step that most people take with intentionality, is moving from I like games to I want to invest in game literacy and making myself more of an expert on that.
And that does pay out because it does help with games, right? Like you can see this in all kinds of ways. Once you understand core concepts in card games, other card games generally become easier because you understand like primary, tertiary, secondary. Why did I do them in that order? No one knows. Resource structures. You understand like win conditions and various different archetypes of things that rely on cards and some amount of math, right?
And it's not just games, or like it works that way for everything. If you have broad literacy in, internet hardware, your ability to take an off-the-shelf router or other things and get it working in your house is radically different than someone who doesn't.
Yes.
Like it's part of becoming an expert in things, is you understand the concepts, and that lets you understand the variation, or just look at them and go like, oh, of course it works that way. And to be surprised when it doesn't, and question to why they made those decisions.
Yep. That's a big one. So let's sort of, I want to break the idea of literacy down into like two, it's actually three, I think, now that I think about it, like broad categories, right? So like there is...
Pure surprise and a fanatical devotion to...
No, not making Monty Python jokes. This is not the Spanish Inquisition. Three things. One, extremely general game literacy. This is a thing that most of you probably already have, but people do not acquire without effort. For instance, controllers. It takes time to acclimatize your hands to the shape of a controller. That is a kind of literacy for what we're talking about. Right, yeah, right. Like a Joy-Con versus a Pro Controller versus using a keyboard for WASD and mouse, right? That is a kind of like baked in basic skill literacy that people do have to acquire in some way.
I'm minorly curious on how many different things that can control movement.
Sure. Yeah. So
that's within arm's reach.
Yeah. So that's one of them, right? That's like the top level, right? And that's a thing that most of you have on lock because you're here watching a video on a channel about game design, on a show about game design that's two dudes talking in a virtual coffee shop. So you probably have that on lock. Second is genre literacy. And that's kind of what we were talking about with MOBAs, right? We were attempting to find a way to help people build genre literacy for MOBAs. Because if I say last hit, you probably understand kind of what that means, but not necessarily why it's important right off the bat. Right? Or understand what the idea of the laning phase is, or what a jungle is, or what ganking is. We've used that word way too many times. We're going to have to do something about that.
I'm going to write a short on the etymology of... Hey, surprising thing. When we were doing the MOBA episode, Matt at one point was like, hey, you keep saying ganking. And like, where'd that come from? Is that a league term? And I actually did some research. It comes, I believe, out of early hip-hop culture.
Yes, it does.
So I'm going to have to write an etymology of the word ganking and trace basically modern MOBAs back to hip-hop
early
culture.
Hip-hop, yep. Which relates to blues. It's all related, and we're tying 100%. It back. Right, so those are all examples of genre literacy. Or if you're familiar with MOBAs and not with fighting games, what's a combo? What's a mix-up? What's chip damage? Right? What's an... right, what's wind-up frames? Right? What's a hitbox? What's a hurt box? How are those different? What, right? And so we have all of these, what's frame data, right? All of these things are genre specific, and you can choose a specific game to help gain genre literacy, and some are better at it than others. For instance, I've been playing a fair amount of Street Fighter 6 to try and understand fighting games better, and that has a lot of those things baked into it. But I could also play Guilty Gear Strive or Mortal Kombat or Tekken or any number of other things to get that genre literacy, as an example there. And then I think the third one is game literacy. And that's probably the one that's the weirdest, and I will say the hardest. And what I kind of
say game, GAME?
Yeah, a single game. Literacy about one particular game. And I think that's sort of where our title leads us, and I think that's where it gets more difficult. Because I don't know, Geoff, is there a genre of game that you don't particularly like?
Plenty.
Okay. Can you name one?
Sure. Not a big fan of sports games.
Okay, cool. In the field of...
sorry, I could keep going, but okay, sure.
No, that's a good one. In the field of sports games, is there a gradient between sports games you might find vaguely interesting, probably related to some kind of sport that you enjoy, and sports games that you just completely miss and have no relation to whatsoever?
I mean, I'm sure there must be, but for me in general, like, I don't think I've ever, other than like for research purposes, played any. Actually, Wii Sports is probably the single sports game I've played the most, but I don't think that actually counts.
Right, because it's not a sports game in the way that we would consider most sports games.
Right.
Right. It is a game about sport, but not a game about FIFA or Madden or Gran Turismo or...
Well, Gran Turismo would be racing. I would differentiate that out.
I think racing's a subcategory of sports games. We can fight about this later.
Sure.
Not important. But my point is that because it's a genre, right? If you wanted to gain literacy about sports games in general through that genre, you could probably find one that was more palatable to you than others. Versus the extreme case of this game, this particular singular game is pivotal to the industry, and I don't like it, but I'm going to play it because it specifically brings things that no other game does to the idea of literacy.
And actually, I'm going to throw something in just looking at chat for a minute.
Yeah.
That may also sound controversial. I think when people talk about sports games, it actually is shorthand for team sports games.
I agree with that.
And that, you know, something like where you take individual turns, like bowling or golf, don't have the same characteristics of baseball, soccer, football, basketball, cricket, like kind of the big sports games that you see.
Can we have a cricket game, please? That would be so much fun because I might actually learn cricket.
Or rugby. Like there are big, like the team sports games are obviously all very different depending on the sports, but have many, many, many of the same overlapping characteristics.
Yeah.
That just, you know, I don't watch them on TV. Why would I go spend a whole bunch of time playing them there? Yeah. But also, it's weird. I've played them because I recognize that for some people, those are the most important games in the industry.
Right.
Those are the game, you know, they buy 2 games a year, one of which is the updated Madden.
Which is why they do that, chat, right? For all that some people continuously bemoan Madden's habit of coming out with a new game every year, there's a reason they do it. It's because it sells. They wouldn't do it if they weren't making a lot of money off of it. And they make a lot of money off of it.
Well, and not just it sells. For the people who are interested in it, the fact that player A has moved over to this team or player B had a breakout year and their stats are better, like those things matter to them when they're playing through and engaging with their favorite pastime. Like having, you know, somebody who is 4 years out of date or missing, you know, a third of the roster on a team because there was only an update every 4 years would feel in some cases disrespectful.
Yeah, that's fair. That's valid.
I actually just kind of had that epiphany right there as well, that Like I kind of knew it, but it came back in full force.
It was a good epiphany.
Anyway, but
so my point is that there are, when we talk about literacy, right? So we talk about general, we talk about genre, and then there's specific game. And I think there are like, when I say specific game literacy, I am applying this to like the giants, right?
okay.
I am applying this to the games around which the industry continues to turn. Not necessarily last year's Game of the Year, although Game of the Year lists are a place to start with this, but a game that continually shows up and has a gravitational force that moves other games around it. I'm
Portal.
talking about Fortnite.
Oh, I heard gravitational and I immediately went to Portal.
I mean, Portal's definitely on the list, right? Like if you haven't played Portal, play Portal. But I think Fortnite is a game that is probably very easily dismissed by some people as being a game that is not for them, because it isn't, because it's not aimed at you and you don't do the things that you wanted to. But I've played a little Fortnite with Matt. It is surprising how much like specific cultural nuance and literacy just oozes out of so many weird corners of Fortnite that I just did not understand till I played Fortnite. And I think that is sort of my first big thing, is that if you've never played it and you want to play games for gaming literacy, play Fortnite for like not a long time. You'll be playing against bots. Play for like 2 hours. You'll play against bots who win all your games, but play Fortnite, right? And that's weird, because normally we suggest games that people would enjoy, and I actually did not enjoy Fortnite at all, and I think most people will.
Again, lots of people do.
Yeah, lots of people do, and I understand why they do now in a way that I don't think I did before. It's weird. Fortnite is weird. Talking about playing Fortnite, even though I dislike it, is weird.
But it's also like that thumbnail I made where you should play, insert game with Fortnite, but a whole bunch of covers up on the thing. Like there is a reason for that if you're trying to get broad literacy.
Yes.
The same thing with something like Madden or Halo or, League of Legends or any number of other, like if you really kind of want to start understanding it, or to be honest, Farmville or 2 or whatever the current one is, or what's the game that just passed Candy Crush? There's a game that I think there's one that's out. I have to go look. I saw it in a script come in that apparently is crushing, no pun intended, crushing Candy Crush right now. When Candy Crush has been around for a long time as one of the number one games in the industry, just from people playing and money made and all the stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's interesting to see. It may not be your game, but understanding why other people are sticking to it.
Yeah.
And quick side note, as we're talking about this, we accidentally came up with a new idea for some shorts we want to try doing. And this specifically, like I was showing off, pre-stream, I was showing off this, my very first Switch, because I actually missed the Switch and went right to a Switch 2. And again, I've missed a whole swath of games for that, but there are so many games to play. But I have a youngin', and for Valentine's Day weekend, the family is getting a Switch 2 that we can all go start playing Mario Kart on. And he's just getting to the age to start showing him some real games as opposed to like tablet games. iPad games for young kids.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it because we're starting to also do shorts we used to do a series called Games You Might Not Have Tried. And we're thinking to turn that also into shorts, games you might not have tried. And I was asking Matt and Will, is Portal something we could talk about on that? And Matt was immediately like, no, Portal's too old. Everybody's played it. And I'm like, well, actually, I just gave Portal as a birthday present to my mid-teen nephew. And he was like, wow, Uncle Geoff, this game's amazing. I'm like, yes, it is. So thinking also of a series we might do, games your kids might, instead of games you might not have tried, games your kids might not have played or something like that. And I think that's a whole other series. Like games you might not have tried is probably a sleeper hit or something with a really cool mechanic.
Right.
where games your kids might not have played is for the, late 20s, early 30s, or even 40-year-old parents whose kids are starting to get to the age where they're like, oh, what games still stand up? Like, not for necessarily game literacy, so that though that's part of it, but just really fun games that still hold up well, like Tetris.
Because, I think that there's broad overlap in that, because I think that there's the first kind of literacy we're talking about, right? Like the top level, how to play video game literacy is a thing that is often developed strongly by those first games that we play, right? Like, I'll give you an easy example. I have like no platformer literacy, like at all. I am bad at Mario in every format, but I'm particularly bad at 2D platforming because I skipped Mario Brothers, despite many of my peers having played Mario Brothers. I did not do the Mario Brothers thing. So I'm bad at it because I don't have a lot of literacy there, but I do have literacy in other places because those were the games that I started with, like Tetris. Played a lot of Tetris. I like Tetris a lot.
I think that's gonna be one of the first games I download for Shorty.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two things, right? One, I see chat talking about what games to play, and the second one is like, how do we approach this, right? Because if we're trying to get the most out of the experience, it's not merely, all right, I am going to find a stick, put it between my teeth so I don't bite my tongue off, and go install Fortnite. I'm going to bite on the stick the entire time I play Fortnite, and I'm going to hate it, is not going to be a productive experience, and it's not what we're suggesting. How do you do the thing? How do you make that experience the most productive it possibly can be, the most enlightening it can be, the most rewarding it can be intellectually, if you're going to spend time playing a game you don't emotionally vibe with? And I think one of the first ones for me, and this is definitely true in me playing WoW right now, is to have a specific goal that you want to like get to, right? And it needs to be like a specific time-bound or what's the word I'm looking for? Aspirational, skill-based goal, right? But have a specific goal. Don't just be like, I'm going to play Fortnite. I'm going to play 3 games of Fortnite with the intention of, seeing the whole map or getting all the loot or finding all the things or getting in a 1v1 or whatever, right? And I like if possible with friends. Also plan your exit strategy, correct. No, but
actually, some games with friends. Actually, let me push back on that a little bit. Sorry, I was trying to start taking notes on from some of the chat stuff.
Yeah.
I think playing some of these games with friends is actually detrimental because it means you don't have the freedom to stop and kind of poke at a thing. If you're trying to hop into a game of League of Legends, do it with friends. Hopefully somebody who's played before so they can kind of walk you through. That is an information dense and concept dense game. If you're going to go play a Call of Duty, don't hop into multiplayer. Go play through a couple hours of the campaign and be like, cool, I've kind of seen the thing. Enter in the way and don't put a time pacing on yourself that expectation of somebody waiting for you may kind of rush you along. If you're going to go play Peak or Among Us, friends.
Yeah.
You're looking thoughtful, Will.
Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to formulate a disagreement with chat, and I'm trying to do it in a thoughtful way because I'm having like a gut reaction to chat pushing back on some of these things, because I think one of my problems is I'm making an assumption that I realize not everyone is making when we talk about this.
Okay, let's hear the assumption.
Literacy, in the case of gaming specifically, is not wholly intellectual. It is also reflexive. And that is hard, right? So, for instance, if I am playing a third-person shooter and an MMO, In both cases, I have a behind the character, over the shoulder viewpoint of where the character is going, but the two control entirely differently in the majority of cases. Right? I'm trying to give me the die. Give me the die. No. Okay. So, like, for instance, right? So I've been playing a lot of Deadlock and I've been playing a lot of WoW and 14, right? And those control differently. And something about that experience makes me non-intellectually know that in a third-person shooter, I move in a certain way and I control my my camera in a certain way to affect the way that my character moves through the game world. And in a MMO, it's totally different. And I'm not intellectually thinking about those in the moment. That's reflexive. So, like, that to me also feels like a kind of literacy. Right? Does that seem true?
Maybe. Like, part of it is, well, you also might get up there as just some of the norms. Like,
Sure.
These kinds of games definitely have cameras, or, you know, your ability to adjust your field of view in these kinds of ways, or these games are over here are different. And some of that alone, like camera control, can make a game feel radically different.
Agreed.
You know, if Overwatch was a third person instead of a first person game, it would just feel significantly different. And the way you played it, you would, some of the abilities they give you, you just wouldn't be able to do, but it would introduce others.
Correct. For instance, there is the peril of corners is entirely different depending on whether you are in a third person or first person shooter. Because in a third person shooter, you can place your model against the safe side of the corner and use your camera to see around the corner. And in the first person shooter, you cannot. You have to lean your actual character's head out from behind the corner and risk getting shot to see around the corner, right? As an example of how radically different that can make it. But I think there is, I guess, is skill part of the gaming literacy that we're talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think being good at a thing is the same as getting knowledge of a thing.
Okay.
I think getting good at a thing is a whole separate, I would say, skill set and journey.
Okay.
I think game literacy can bring you in at a higher skill floor for a lot of these.
Because I would say that there is a part of the skill continuum that is effectively game literacy, but only insofar as it gets you to the floor of playing a game.
Right.
Right. Like
because you may have a brain that just doesn't, for example, solve block puzzles like Bejeweled. Like some people just don't see them, the patterns in the way that other people's do. And a whole bunch of playing might increase your brain's ability to recognize, but it also, like, I don't think your skill at being able to number match is an important part of learning about block match is an important part about learning about Bejeweled. In the same way, but you still need certain floors. Like, I remember playing Halo for the first time with my wife, who'd never played a Halo's first person, right?
Halo's first person.
Who'd never played a first person shooter before. And I think the first hour was just painful as she learned how to navigate in a first person view with a game controller.
Right.
Like, she'd just never done that. But a couple of weeks later, we'd solved the campaign, and she was like, "Hey, let's go try Halo 3." Or it was Halo 3. Let's go try Halo 3 multiplayer. I want to see what this is about.
Right.
Like, so she had this huge ramp up, and she couldn't actually really understand the genre until she hit a certain floor of being able to move herself with a 3D controller, because that was an essential part of being able to get any experience in that. But like the next thing we tried for that, she already had that skill floor. Like, she knew how to navigate in 3D using an Xbox controller.
Yeah.
But,
so is there like a level of skill that underlies your ability to acquire literacy?
I think so. And I think that's true for other things too. There's a level of skill in being like a film student to be able to recognize, wow, that was a long take, to like actually notice where the cuts are happening, or to like look at this, to understand the style of direction and not just have it pass through your mind as a thing that happened.
Except I feel like there is a difference in gaming specifically that there is no analog for in other genres of media, because you have to be able to participate to some degree in the game. It is more analogous to, say, learning how to dance than it is to, like, the mechanics of putting on a movie, right? Because I would say that the skill is not, like, the kind of skill I'm talking about exists before the recognizing the long shot, right? Recognizing a particular kind of cut or an editing choice feels like literacy. And one of the problems with gaming is that we have this barrier to entry, like not being able to put the movie on the television, right? Like,
so almost like having the right hardware.
Yeah, kind of, right? That
you can't watch a DVD until you have a DVD player.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously not a one-on-one lineup.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you're a music student or you need a certain amount of music knowledge, say like what different instruments sound like, to be able to start pulling pieces apart as you're listening to that, you know, as opposed to it sounds like music. You're like, oh, I'm hearing the strings come in. You know, I'm hearing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're never going to get exact parallels.
No, we're not.
I agree that there are certain floors for certain genres.
Right. I'm just trying to, I'm still wondering, like, are the components of this purely intellectual or not? Right.
And this is why, Will, I was saying earlier, I don't think the word literacy is quite right.
Right. So
what
is the right word?
I don't know. I mean, it could be broad expertise or broad knowledge. You know, if you want to have broad knowledge of games.
Yeah. Because
some games, like if you're going to go play Monument Valley for a long time has been like my gateway game for people who've never played games.
Yes, Monument Valley is so good. It's
because you can show them it's super pretty. You kind of show them that first rotation or so, and they kind of go, oh, and they spend a while fiddling with it. But they don't need to bring in any other knowledge to be able to play that game.
Right.
In a radically different way than like, let's go play Halo.
Yeah, I agree with that. So
I think there's a spectrum of knowledge and dexterity and or other skills you need to be able to play certain kinds of games.
And of course, the components of what that floor to play that game is vary wildly between genres, right? You have like incredibly high APM stuff. You have incredibly dexterity specific stuff, battle royales, right? Rocket League has very specific, absurdly high dexterity requirements for some stuff versus chess or Magic or Civilization, right? And so the components are going to be different too, which is another thing I think that's getting in, that's making it different. So,
by the way, just as a quick note, a lot of the stuff up on the walls is actually stuff that we've like had around for a while and is possibly merch.
Yeah.
So, like if you want one of those little Zoe plushies up here, or that, one day I'll learn mirroring.
It's right above your head.
Poster right here is actually a cool shirt, and that one's a poster, and the gaming mug down here is an actual
mug
thing. But it's this isn't a merch pitch. It's more of a, when we were designing the coffee shop, we are like, you should put stuff in a coffee shop, and we're like, well.
We got stuff. Unfortunately, I regret to inform everyone that Hecknomancer, the cabinet video game, is not yet real, nor do we have plans to make it real yet.
Actually, hold on. Thunder was right.
It's true. It is true. You did turn it into a shameless plug.
Can't help it. I'm also the studio director, and part of my job is making sure everybody gets paid.
That's true.
And if you want to buy a cool poster for your wall and help make sure the staff gets paid, double win.
I appreciate that. Okay, so let's go into this. So if you're trying to play a game that you wouldn't normally play to get whatever the it factor is that we're talking about, the je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi of je ne sais game?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It helps to have an approach, right? And we got a little sidetracked. We were talking about playing with friends, right? And that's true for some games, right? Versus others that are very solitary in their nature. Please don't try and stream your first playthrough of Undertale on Twitch, it goes poorly. Play Undertale by yourself. Don't tell any of your friends you're playing Undertale. In fact, the best way to engage with Undertale is to tell no one to go into offline mode to play Undertale by yourself and then talk about Undertale when you're done.
Undercover Undertale?
Yeah, correct. Undertale is got quite the divisive fandom, as an example. But it is a game that many people, I think, would gain something from playing.
Man, my cough today.
Yeah,
I'm glad I bought the thing with the quick mute.
Yeah. Yeah, and yes, someone was asking why Undertale is a game that you don't do that to, and that is correct. It is because many people believe that there is a correct way to play the game, which suggests to me that they do not understand Undertale.
There's a lot of uns around here.
Yeah, right. Understanding Undertale, undercover. Yeah, no, it's true.
But for all these, like, getting back to the high level, how do you play games with specific intention of gaming literacy?
Yeah.
And whether we have a better word for literacy, maybe we do. One of them is to play broadly. Like, I think that is the single most important thing, is to play games that, you know, if you're like, hey, I play League and a couple of other things, start branching out. Some of the ways we talked about earlier. Maybe it is the free Epic game. Maybe you go on Good Old Games and you you buy a Humble Bundle, or you go over to Metacritic and you're like, okay, every 90 plus game for the past 10 years, like, there's different ways to engage with it. And I kind of like, you know, if you're looking for broad first and represent, like, iconic representation, every 90 plus game on Metacritic is a great iconic representation start.
Yeah.
Because to get a game that scores that high, it has to be overwhelmingly good. And I'm talking about the critic, not the fan voted. Though you could do the fan voted too, but we just did a whole episode on that.
Right.
Was that last week or 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed trying to get a copy of Corey in the House on the Nintendo DS.
And, you know, or there are places that, and indie games have started showing up a lot more on Metacritic too. But, you know, you could do it within certain ways. You could say, I want huge literacy on the indie scene, on the overall scene, on the AAA scene, whatever it is. But broad playing with kind of a plan about how you go that. And number two is to, you know, have that exit plan we were talking about. This isn't go master all of these games. There is not enough time in the world for anybody to play all of the games of note. And I will say anybody.
Yeah.
Like, there are too many games for that to happen. But play broadly and with an exit plan. Like, hey, I'm going to spend, you know, and maybe it is. Maybe it's a game a week. You're like, I'm going to play an hour a day in a game a week. Cool. In 1 year, you'll have 52 games that you've sunk somewhere between 5 to 7 hours in. And that alone, if you're playing broadly, will have greatly expanded what you've bumped into. And kind of the playing with intentionality, where you're playing it, but you're also looking at it. Maybe you take a couple notes. Maybe you're like, you know, what made this game interesting?
I actually put note taking on there for a very specific reason, which is that I think that the intention to take notes changes your mindset.
Ooh, tell me more.
Okay, so if I am playing a game off stream just to play the game, I will, generally speaking, even if it's a game I'm interested in, get very zoned in on the game. And this is like the way that my particular brain works, and it might be the way your brain works, and it might not be. But if I have a note doc up and I am trying to think, trying to look at things and think about the game as a thing on which I am taking notes, and this is the one that cooks a lot of people, even if I take no notes, I will remember the experience differently as an object of intellectual pursuit versus, hey, I just played this game. It was like fine, right? Yeah. Or like, for me, it can also be the kind of conversation I'm having. right? So like with the WoW example, yesterday I played with Jay from Design Delve over on Second Wind. Having a conversation about the design of the game and the strengths and weaknesses of different parts, and as he found them in his experience with like certain crunchy parts of the game, caused me to engage in the game very differently than I did when I played by myself on Monday. Because when I played by myself on Monday, I slipped way too far into that, like, I'm just playing the game sort of mentality, right? So like finding whatever it is for you that keeps you cognizant of your experience as an object of intellectual pursuit is really helpful for me and might be for you.
And it's gonna be individual for different people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if you're somebody who treats this as more of a study thing and your brain works that way, maybe instead of an hour a day, you know, in the evenings, it's 55 minutes and 5 minutes where you take a notepad and you're like, what was the most interesting things I noticed?
Right. You can
this doesn't have to be to publish or anything, but like maybe your brain works best because you were trained in school. You read a book and then you know, do a little write up afterwards.
Yep.
Maybe it's you read a book, you're taking notes while you're doing it. Maybe it's you're playing with a friend and the two of you are having a discussion while you're playing, whether it's a co-op game or maybe you're playing separately and one of the two of you is like sharing your screen with the other one so they can watch and you can play at the same. Like there's lots of ways, or you grab your partner and you sit on the couch together, and there's lots of ways to do this exercise. There isn't a right way. There's the way that works best for you and your personal way of interacting with this medium.
Yep. Very much agreed.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I love doing live analysis so much at like conferences and other things is it's fun, but getting to sit with 4 or 5 experts, you know, and just be like, hey, what was that?
Right.
And get everybody like talking about it.
Right.
That's a fun thing.
Yeah. And that, treating it as an object of art for consideration rather than as something that is merely for entertainment helps with that as well. My other two were to have in mind what you're hoping to get out of the experience. And that can be like a lot of things. In my case, it's generally understanding and a good piece of content, but like keeping that in mind, like, okay, I don't particularly like the way WoW leveling works, but I do like understanding how WoW leveling works and how that process goes together. And so for me, like have that goal of what I'm trying to learn is learn how leveling occurs in World of Warcraft versus how leveling occurs in Guild Wars or Elder Scrolls or Final Fantasy 14 or Realm of the Mad God or RuneScape or what are the other MMOs I've played?
Yeah. And
any number of them, right? Like
Warframe.
How is it different, right? And that
WoW leveling versus Warframe leveling, Will.
Those are two entirely different. Well, God,
I know. One
day we can have the big conversation of is Warframe an MMO and why is it? The last one, and this one's a weird emotional one.
Okay.
Even if you're playing a game that you absolutely hated at the get-go, you might start having fun.
Yeah.
And that one's like, depending on your level of...
I think you're coming in too strong on that. I think most people, if you're playing most games, will have a decently good time. Like, I think one of the great things about video games versus, say, being a film student, having to watch some of the early things that help build your foundational knowledge, I think most games are generally fun. It may not be your favorite kind of game, but you're still weighing, hey, I get to eat a cupcake, you know. It may not be my favorite kind of cupcake, but it's still a cupcake.
That's true. I think...
I'm pretty sure there are many things you hate more than playing WoW.
Right. No. I'm overselling a bit, right? For, I think, largely as a rhetorical device. But the idea of you might find a deeper connection and continue to play in a way that you weren't expecting when you go in, I think is true, right? I think there are definitely games that people will be like, oh, I'm just playing this game because it's in my backlog, and it might end up being your new favorite game, right? Like I had I had Hollow Knight in my backlog for forever. I had Outer Wilds in my backlog forever. I had, what was the other one? It wasn't Chance. Ori and the Blind Forest I had in my backlog forever, right? And just taking a chance on those, I found something that I loved. And like, that's what I'm encouraging, right? I'm overselling it a little bit, like that you won't have any fun, but the idea, like being open to the idea that your opinions on the game will change radically as you look at it thoughtfully is my point.
You're also moving from either what have I heard about it or the presentation in the storefront into the actual game experience.
Right, which are very, very, very different things.
Most times, unless you're playing one of the Japanese RPGs where the first 2 hours is all cutscenes before you actually get to any gameplay.
As a Final Fantasy 14 player, how dare you call me out so accurately? It's not mostly cutscenes, it's like half cutscenes, it's fine.
There was one game, I can't remember which, we did for Design Club at PAX one year.
It was Pokemon Scarlet. First hour was cutscenes.
Oh, actually, and one of the Metroids.
Yes.
One of the Metroids. Dread. Dread. We were doing Dread and we hadn't scouted it enough to know we should have started X amount into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, most Final Fantasy 14 expansions are mostly cutscenes, which is one of the reasons why they go so much faster when we're leveling alts, but it's neither here nor there. Yeah. I've lost track, Jeff. My brain is...
Well, I think this was one of the ones we had, like, talking about it, we had a really strong, here's the thing we want to talk about, here's why we think it's important. But I think because there are a myriad different paths to expanding your repertoire, if that is of interest to you.
Yes.
I think there isn't an easy, concise conclusion that we can wrap up with a bow and say, it's done.
I think
because it's different for lots of people.
Right. I think the best that we're going to be able to do is convince you that there is a path, that there is such a thing as this gaming expertise, this broad artistic knowledge of the idea of games that exists in different levels for gaming in general, for genres, and then sometimes for very specific industry defining games. Right. And that it may be of interest to you intellectually to pursue that knowledge, even if those games aren't inherently interesting to you. Right. And that there's a way that you can do that.
Quick note. I actually keep a spreadsheet of every game that I feel like I've played enough to understand. And one of the things I did on that was I marked down not just the game name, but the platform. So like I played, Halo on the Xbox. And because sometimes it's interesting too, as you look down there, you're like, wow, I played a lot of console games and no mobile games. Or, it's a way to see it. But it's also fun to look back years later at this ever-growing list and be able to say, it's kind of a nice motivator if that's your thing, because it doesn't start out long, but a year or two into it, you look at it, you're like, wow, I have looked at a lot of games.
Yeah. I'm working on my backlog. Actually, there are several websites that'll let you do a collection of all the games you've played and the rating you give it, and
nice.
Let you take notes. And I'm working on one of those for me because I have officially played so many games on stream that I have forgotten many of them, which is not necessarily a great place to be when people ask you about have you played X on stream.
You are an atypical example for a number of reasons.
That is correct. I'm playing games 4 days a week. And used to be more on stream constantly, and I'm always looking for new games. So I will fully own that I am quite an atypical example here. I also think that it's worth noting, if we're talking about me being an atypical example, that my dislike of certain games or genres is also deeply rooted in the fact that I have an additional layer of experience, which is the way that chat behaves in that space. Undertale and Baba Is You were two of the worst experiences as a streamer that I've had, because the backseating was out of control, because people are so passionate about those games that they cannot help but try and help, even if it's unhelpful. Or how chat often bounces on puzzle games. Chat has a real problem sometimes maintaining puzzle games because they're not allowed to solve the puzzle, and solving the puzzle is the thing that makes you interested in the game.
Yeah.
right?
Or
And
if you're
that's tough.
going for a heavy story game,
Right.
it's easy. Everybody's along for the ride.
Correct. Yeah. And that is like a thing that deeply influences my like or dislike of certain genres because of that. So that is worth noting.
Yeah.
About those things. Yeah. We have an interesting week
All right.
What's
going on
coming
this
up
week?
for you next week, which is sort of adjacent to this topic, but more concrete. We want to talk about the games you would give a kid. And
this will be kind of for next week.
this is for next week. So have in mind the games that are out right now, that are playable right now, that you would give to a child at different age ranges, because it's kind of an interesting phenomena to see the games that we wish we had grown up with, I think is the way I'll say it, right?
Yeah.
The games that we wish we'd had earlier. So that's going to be our topic for next week is gaming for kids.
I think let's put in the broads. Like, I think 5 to 6 is where honestly most kids can start on their first level of what I'd call real games.
Yeah.
And there's probably that 5 to, and we don't have to do every year, but you jump up to like the 8s, the 10s, the kind of 12 to 13s to 16s. At 16 you can play
pretty much anything.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Where there's kind of different, like, and having a young kid who's getting older, like, it's been a fun experience as a designer, as somebody who's used to trying to make things, but then explain to people, or to gently explain to them without them realizing they're getting explained to them how to do the thing that you designed.
Mm-hmm.
Like watching somebody who's learning.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Not this.
Yeah.
Not this. Right. Spin Dash knows it's not this, but not NES Monopoly. Not Nintendo Hard Lion King for the SNES, right? Like,
actually, I'm fine with this breakpoint right here, kind of the 2 to 5, because that's 6 to 10, 11 to 14, 15 to 18 in adult.
Yeah,
I think are so somewhere around there. As you kind of look, because for example, as I said, I just gave I have a nephew who's in that 15 to 18 range and gave him Portal for his birthday, and he was amazed. But in the 11 to 14, I gave him, I think it was Breath of the Wild, and he was also amazed.
Yeah.
Like, picking the right game for the right age can really help sell games that are interesting and worthwhile.
Yeah, and also games that are enriching, right? Like, oddly so in ways that we don't necessarily anticipate. But so that's our topic for next week. So please join us for that. The week after, we have even more fun stuff for you planned, but we'll keep that in the can for now. We do have a bunch of stuff planned for you. And as always, we'll be back on Monday with me and Matt to talk on breakfast about, and it's only Thursday and we've already had a whole week of gaming news. The studio that made Highguard is having mass layoffs. There's more weird stuff about the Discord age verification thing. There was one other major piece of gaming news. Oh yeah, they're updating Diablo 2.
Whoa.
They're updating Diablo 2 to add a new character class. Diablo 2 came out in 2000, Jeff. Diablo 2 can vote, and they're updating it. Wild stuff.
26 years. Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a Blizzard thing.
Right? Yeah.
Actually, that's an old school Blizzard thing.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about all that and more this coming Monday on Breakfast. Please join us here on Twitch and YouTube for that. We'll look forward to it. If you're hanging out here on Twitch, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with me and Matt playing some more WoW. I'm now accidentally ahead of Matt, so we have to get Matt caught up. We're going to be doing a leapfrog thing. So
it's time to get good.
Yeah. Until next time, everybody, please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. We'll see you all then. Say bye to the people, Jeff.
Bye to the people, Jeff. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.